that are absolute non-starters. And I assume that's what the Prime Minister was referring to, but I don't want to speak for him. But at the same time, we see in what was sent back space to continue to pursue an agreement. And these things are always negotiations. It's not flipping a light switch. It's not yes or no. There's invariably back and forth. And as I said, we see the space for that. And given the imperative, given the importance that we all attach to bringing the hostages home, we're intent on pursuing. Finally, as I've said before, we were before October 7th pursuing the possibility of normalization between Israel and Saudi Arabia. And in fact, I was scheduled to come to Israel and to Saudi Arabia, I believe it was October 10th, to pursue that, and in particular, to focus on what we already knew back then was a necessary Palestinian component to any normalization agreement. When I saw the Crown Prince in Saudi Arabia just a couple of days ago, he repeated to me his desire and determination to pursue normalization. But he also repeated that in order to do that, two things need to happen. One, there needs to be calm in Gaza. Two, there needs to be a clear and credible pathway to a Palestinian state. So, as I said before, you can see the path forward for Israel and for the entire region, with integration, with normalization, with security assurances, with pathway to a Palestinian state that entirely changes the equation and the future for the better, for Israelis, for Arabs, for Palestinians, and in so doing, isolates groups like Hamas, isolates countries like Iran that want a very different future. As I also said, going down that path, pursuing it requires hard decisions. None of this is easy. And so it will be up to Israelis to decide what they want to do, when they want to do it, how they want to do it. No one's going to make those decisions for them. All that we can do is to show what the possibilities are, what the options are, what the future could be, and compare it to the alternative. And the alternative right now looks like an endless cycle of violence and destruction and despair. We know where the better path lies, but I don't minimize in any way the very difficult decisions that would need to be made by all concerned to travel down that path.
And LaGuardia with The Economist.
Thank you very much, Secretary. Can you, you've used some very specific words in describing this vision for a better path. What do you actually mean by clear, credible, irreversible, time-bound path to a Palestinian state? And in Qatar, and again today, you spoke about Israel receiving security guarantees and assurances from its neighbors. What does that actually mean? What's on the table for Israel if it goes down this path? And would that include additional U.S. assurances to Israel on top of the arrangements that currently exist? Thank you.
I'm not going to get ahead of things or get into specifics. I think those words speak for themselves. How they're defined, how they're made real. That's the subject of diplomacy. It's very much the subject of the conversations that I've been having in the region, as well as here, as we flesh that out and give real substance to it. But I don't want to get ahead of it. What I can add in response to the rest of your question is, it's clear to me from talking to many of the countries in the region that they're prepared to do things with and for Israel that they were never prepared to do in the past, including steps that would further address any security concerns it might have. And similarly, the United States is prepared to do that too. But the details of that, the substance of that, these are all things that we continue to talk about in these conversations, in our diplomacy, and we'll bring it into ever sharper focus. Because at some point, yes, it will be very important to forward exactly those details and see if, for all parties concerned, there is a credible pathway to walk down. And again, I believe there is, but there remains a lot of work to be done in the weeks and months ahead.
The final question goes to Mohammed Jamjoon with Al Jazeera English.
Mr. Secretary, thank you. I have two issues I want to ask you about. First is regarding the fact that you've spoken about the importance of creating a pathway for a Palestinian state. There have been reports that you've asked the State Department to review options on potentially recognizing Palestinian states. I want to ask you if that's the case, and if so, is that a type of pressure point that you feel is needed to get Israel to agree to a ceasefire and one that could ultimately lead to a two-state solution? That's the first issue. Second issue I want to ask you about is the fact that Israel has maintained that Hamas needs to be eliminated, that it cannot have any role in governing Gaza after the war has ended. Where does the U.S. currently stand on this? Is it in any way acceptable to the U.S. for Hamas to be playing a role in governing Gaza in a day-after scenario, and what would U.S. policy be toward Hamas going forward?
The short answer to the second part of the question is no. As to the first part of the question, look, as I just said, there are a number, as we're defining the path forward, including the pathway to a Palestinian state, there are a number of policy options that people may propose as part of that process. But our focus today is on all of the diplomacy needed to bring it about, including, again, getting ideas, getting proposals from all concerned, and putting those together in credible and clear plan. So that's where we are. And as I said, we'll continue to have these conversations, to engage in that diplomacy, to really sharpen the focus on all of the different elements that would be necessary, that would be involved, and that each of the parties believes is important. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone, and apologies for keeping folks late. Hope you have a chance to have some dinner. Thanks.
Secretary of State Antony Blinken there in Tel Aviv, Israel, after negotiations with the Israeli leadership and with other players in the region. And it was a newsy session, which doesn't always happen with secretaries of state. They're diplomatic in their way they speak to the press. But this time there was some news. Secretary of State Blinken saying that this effort to get a ceasefire deal would also release hostages. Hamas had a response. He said, while there are some clear non-starters in Hamas's response, we do think it creates space for an agreement that can be reached. He also spoke, I think, as bluntly as an American official has spoken about Israel's moral responsibilities in prosecuting this war in Gaza. Secretary Blinken saying that Israelis, quote, Israelis were dehumanized in the most horrific way on October 7th. The hostages have been dehumanized every day since, but that cannot be a license to dehumanize others. And he went on to say that the vast majority of Palestinians in Gaza had nothing to do with the attack on October 7th. He said they're just like us. They're families, they're people trying to live their lives, and they do not deserve what is happening to them. As far as U.S. response to the attacks by Iran-backed militias in the region, he said we will continue to defend our people and defend our interests, not to fuel escalation, but to prevent escalation. And in that regard, there has been another U.S. response to the attacks on American forces. A strike in Baghdad, apparently a target is. We'll get more on that in a minute. Let's bring in ABC News senior White House correspondent Selena Wang, ABC News senior Pentagon reporter Louis Martinez, along with ABC News national security and defense analyst Mick Mulroy. Let me go to you first on that news. which is that there's been another American strike, this time in Baghdad. What was the target? What can you tell us?
Terry, we are learning from 2 U.S. officials that there was a U.S. airstrike inside of Baghdad earlier today targeting a high-value target. That is usually speaking for somebody, a description of somebody who is a high-level leader, let's say, of some of these militia groups that we are hearing about that are backed by Iran, that have been behind some of the now more than 167 attacks against U.S. bases in Iraq and Syria. Very scant details about what exactly who they may have been targeting. However, from Iraqi officials, we are getting information from them. They're being very public that there was one of these leaders of one of these militia groups known as Kataib Hezbollah, which the United States has blamed as being part of that attack on the U.S. base in Jordan. That's the base that you're seeing in your screen right now. But for now, at least U.S. officials confirming that there was an airstrike. I guess we're going to wait for and see if we get any more details to come about exactly who it was that they targeted and whether there was a direct correlation between the attack in Jordan and this is a retaliatory strike against the leader from one of those militias.
Louis, thank you once again, as always, for your reporting on this. And so let me go to Selena Wang now at the White House. Selena, Louis talking about the strikes which continue at tit-for-tat game between Iran-backed militias and U.S. response. But I want to talk about what Secretary Blinken was saying, the headline, which is these rather stern words to the Israelis, to the Israeli government, I should say, which is that stop essentially dehumanizing Gazans. And he urged more aid, that Israel, he said, must get more aid into Gaza. Is this a change in tone from the administration in its dealings with the Netanyahu government?
I think, Terry, you've seen this slow build of more forceful tones publicly from this administration, including from the president himself, who's become more critical of Netanyahu, his government, as well as what the Israeli military has been doing. And I agree with you that what we heard from the Secretary of State today was quite forceful and empathetic, really trying to drive home the daily toll of the Palestinian civilians, many of them who had nothing to do with the attack on Israel. And he was really trying to play this fine line here, saying that, look, Israel has a right to defend itself, but it doesn't give them license to harm the civilians. And he was trying to defend the U.S. position, saying the U.S. has been playing a critical role in getting Israel to do more to protect civilians and getting them to do more to get critical aid to open border crossings, but saying publicly that Israel needs to do more. And I think he picked up on a key message from his speech was that we don't think the window for negotiations here on hostages has closed. They believe there is still a path forward despite that very public rebuke from Netanyahu over the response from Hamas to that hostage release proposal. But Blinken being very clear here that it's not over. And he has multiple targets he needs to achieve while he's been in the Middle East. In addition to the hostage negotiations, trying to sort through the day after, convincing Israel to do more to help with humanitarian aid. He's also been in the region trying to tamp down regional tensions in response to what we've been talking about, to those more than 160 attacks on U.S. forces in the region. And including that, on top of that, the U.S. response to the continued Houthi militant attacks on commercial shipping in the Red Sea.
Absolutely. It is a knife region on the knife's edge. Mick, I want to go to you. I know you have worked, doing some work in trying to get aid into Gaza. You've been on the ground in Israel there. What do you think of the Secretary's remark that Israel must do more, and more generally that moral condemnation or moral criticism that we heard that Israel must not dehumanize the people of Gaza in its response? What do you make of that?
So, Terry, if you look at it, around 67% of the population in Gaza relied on food aid before the war, and there were around 500 trucks a day. Now 100% of the population in Gaza rely on those, around 200 trucks coming a day. About half of the humanitarian aid that has been provided is sitting in warehouses in Egypt. And right now the situation is absolutely dire. The Secretary is right. There needs to be multiple more entry points opened up to get this aid to Gaza, because with all that being said, Israel, the IDF is about to be fighting in Rafah. So the one entry point that is being used is about to have serious problems getting aid through it, as the intensity of the fight will be right there at the gate. So it's really important multiple entry points be opened, not just in the south, but also in the north. You can't actually get trucks from the south to the north, but the roads are destroyed. So I think the secretary is pushing that because there's a very real crisis there. It is only going to get worse, both because of the lack of food and lack of medicine, the lack of vaccines for children. It really needs to be something that the international community pushes to get done, which means more aid needs to get into Gaza as soon as possible.
And Secretary Blinken pushing Israel on behalf of the United States to do more. From that, I want to go to the big picture, Mick, on how he talked about the ultimate resolution here, a regional solution where Israel feels more secure and where there is a Palestinian state. We saw pictures of him meeting with Ahmed Abbas, the head of the Palestinian Authority on the West Bank. There he is there. And Blinken said that at the end of the day, out of this terrible war, there must be a, quote, clear, credible, irreversible, and time-bound path to a Palestinian state. Benjamin Netanyahu has staked his political career that will never happen. Is it a non-starter?
So I don't think it's a non-starter, and I do think it's the only way to avoid this almost endless cycle of violence that we've seen there. Of course, the big challenge would be, will Israel accept any government that has any element of Hamas in it? The answer is probably no. The secretary talks about a revitalized Palestinian Authority. That's because they don't have a lot of authority with the Palestinian people. So there needs to be a change in leadership, I would say, and it needs to bring in technocrats, essentially people who don't affiliate necessarily with any one faction, but are very good at what they do, which is governing people from every respect. So I think there is an important message there that the region, as you said, needs to get behind this, has to help build this confidence in Israel in a new revitalized Palestinian Authority that focuses on their own economic well-being and is completely at peace with the neighboring country of Israel. No easy task, but that's the only way I think the United States policy sees as a way to avoid this from happening again in the future, and one in which Secretary Blinken is obviously going to keep pushing whether Prime Minister Netanyahu's in office or not.
Absolutely. It does seem like that is an American policy goal, and he's working hard on it, but it seems a long way away. Certainly feels that way. Selena, the hostage families, they've issued a statement about Netanyahu's decision on the hostage deal. They say the citizens will lose faith in Netanyahu if those hostages aren't returned home. We're looking at it now on the screen here. What's the White House stance at this point on these negotiations?
Look, the president has been clear that the top priority of his to get these hostages returned. You heard the Secretary of State there emphasize that not all hope is lost and that they're still laser focused on trying to get them home. They are still thinking about them. This is still the focus. As you just read from the statement there, though, of course, this is incredibly difficult for these families who've been waiting for so long to get word of when that next temporary ceasefire, when the next deal could be struck. And it appeared that things were really getting close. But again, you had Netanyahu with his strong public rebuke, and now the Secretary of State saying the window has not closed for those hostage families, saying that they're losing faith and need their government help and get those hostages out.
Absolutely a high priority. Louis, as if that whole situation wasn't complicated enough, Syria now said that Israeli airstrikes of the city of Homs in Syria have killed and wounded civilians. What are you hearing from the Pentagon about the danger of escalating? Israel has done this before. Targets inside the government-controlled parts of that war-torn country of Syria. But what are you hearing about Israelis' actions about that region?
Well, Terry, this is a whole other situation that's going on there. This is between Israel, Iran, and Hezbollah, the group that Iran supports in Lebanon. Essentially, for the last couple of years, Israel has been carrying out airstrikes targeting high-value targets affiliated with Hezbollah or with the IRGC in Iran, who are working together there in western parts of Syria. That is very far away from where the United States forces are in eastern Syria, over in the far eastern part by Al-Tanf garrison. But these airstrikes that the Syrian government is saying today have killed civilians, they are not providing any further details about precisely how many civilians may have been killed in the strike. And of course, Israel is not commenting. It's kind of an open secret that Israel has been carrying out these strikes for years. And again, they hardly ever acknowledge them. But in this case, maybe the Syrians will be calling them out on it.
Yeah, last thing, the region needs. Louis, Selena, and Nick, thank you very much for the help on this subject. Big day over there. Thanks very much. And thank you for streaming with us. I'm Terry Moran. The news never stops. Of course, we'll be right back.
You give, and you give. This tax season you get with Straight Talk Wireless. You get unlimited data. You get America's most reliable 5G network. You get a Samsung Galaxy A15 for only $99, so you can give your janky phone to your kid. Yeah! Talk.
Turn your tax refund into a U-Fund. Switch to Straight Talk for plans starting as low as $25 a line.
We are here in Israel, a nation at war.
We've seen tank after tank pouring into this area.
This is where it all began.
Bullet holes all up the wall.
With minutes, the air raid sirens going off.
A sound explosion. We are down here. Tonight, Israel waging a fierce bombardment of Gaza.
The Israel-Hamas war. For non-stop live coverage, stream ABC News Live.
Reporting from southern Israel, from the front lines
In downtown Ramallah.
in Beirut. Wherever the story is, we'll take you there.
ABC Live.
So many people start their day here.
From ABC News, this start here.
To be in the know and get a different take on the day's top stories.
A lot of news today, so let's get to it.
Listen now to the Daily News Podcast honored with 4 Edward Murrow Awards and see why the New York Times calls it a news podcast worth listening to. Start here, ABC News. Make it your daily first listen.
Now, that's a part of the story I bet you didn't see coming.
Wherever you get your podcasts, start here. From America's #1 news source comes the all-new ABC News app. Breaking news, incredible video, faster, smarter, and it can customize to you and your interests. If you love being in the know, you're gonna love this. Experience what all the buzz is about. Experience all-new ABC News app. Download it now.
Reporting from Vaden, Mississippi, I'm Phil Lipoff. Wherever the story is, we'll take you there. You're streaming ABC News Live.
Hello, I'm Terry Moran, and some of the top headlines we're watching at ABC News Live at this hour. Secretary of State Antony Blinken just told the press today that the United States does not think that the window for a deal on a ceasefire and hostage release has closed. He also said that there needs to be a, quote, clear and credible pathway to a Palestinian state. Take a listen to some of what Secretary Blinken said.
Israelis were dehumanized in the most horrific way on October 7th. The hostages have been dehumanized every day since. But that cannot be a license to dehumanize others. The overwhelming majority of people in Gaza had nothing to do with the attacks of October 7th. And the families in Gaza whose survival depends on deliveries of aid from Israel are just like our families. Their mothers and fathers.
Well, all this came after the Israeli Prime Minister delivered a solid no to a proposed hostage and ceasefire deal, calling it, quote, delusional and describing it as, quote, a surrender that would lead to another massacre of Israelis. Netanyahu says the Israeli Defense Forces will continue to target the last remaining strongholds of Hamas inside Gaza, and he claims will act according to international law, allowing the population safe passage out of the combat zones. Well, 2 U.S. officials tell ABC News that the United States has conducted airstrikes in Iraq's capital of Baghdad, targeting what the U.S. called a high-value target. The Iraqi military confirmed the attacks, saying, quote, the investigation is still ongoing to determine the method and source of targeting. This comes as tensions continue to rise in the Middle East after the U.S. military began launching a series of retaliatory strikes in Syria and Iraq in response to the deadly drone attack in Jordan last month that killed those 3 U.S. service members. And we're only a few days away now from Super Bowl 58. Federal, state, local, and NFL officials just held their annual pregame security news conference. As of now, there are no known credible threats against the game or against the city of Las Vegas. 30 agencies are taking part in security efforts at the game. The FBI is monitoring, quote, every scrap that could appear to be a threat. This comes as the Sphere in Las Vegas more attention than normally earlier today after a man was spotted climbing to the top of the spherical structure. Police say the man was looking for publicity and has now been arrested. People do anything for publicity. Thank you for streaming with us. I'm Terry Moran. ABC News Live is here for you anytime with the latest news, context, and analysis. And you can always find us anywhere you stream, on the ABC News app, and of course on abcnews.com as well. News never stops, and GMA 3 starts right now.
What you need to know right now on GMA 3. Nearly 500 mudslides across Los Angeles and record-breaking rain. Gen Z with the latest on the astronomical rainfall totals and the new storm. And the major legal blow for former President Trump. A trio of appeals court judges ruling he does not have immunity against prosecution.
Plus, the stunning setback for House Republicans failing to impeach Homeland Security Chief Alejandro Mayorkas and other losses. Our senior congressional correspondent here with the latest.
Smart. Show them where they're headed before they start eating.
And season 6 of the popular sitcom The Connors debuts tonight. Actress Sarah Gilbert joins us here in the studio.
Also, hello friends, comedian, actress, and author Dose Sloan on the memoir Making Folks Laugh.
And we're going shopping in this Black History Month with Dory Johnson and her special savings on products from Black-owned businesses.
I woke up like this. I woke up like this.
And for fans who want to wake up like this too and look flawless, Beyonce launching a new hair care line.
And the legend, Charlie Wilson, is here in studio with a special medley just for you.
Now, from Times Square, DeMarco Morgan and Eva Pilgrim with Dr. Jen Ashton and What You Need to Know.
And you're listening to a little Charlie Wilson, who's going to be on the show today. I just want to point out, he's from Tulsa, Oklahoma, and my high school, Booker T. Washington. A little bragging rights here.
But I heard he walks around saying that DeMarco Morgan and I are from the same hometown.
I don't know about that.
I think he does.
I'm so excited about it, and it's so exciting to see Rhiannon and Allie in for Eva today. Missed you, girl. You know that.
Thank
Good
you
to
for
have you
having me. So good to see you, as always. Yep.
Of course. Hey, let's talk to America's favorite doctor.
Thank you, my friend.
How about an important matter of fact? Listeria. CDC is talking about an outbreak, a possible outbreak.
So we're talking about a bacterial infection that is responsible for the third leading cause of foodborne related illness deaths in the United States. So CDC is putting out alert, and everyone needs to be aware of this. First of all, what's involved? 2 types of cheese, queso fresco and cotija cheese, manufactured by Rizzo Lopez Foods. 26 people thus far have been infected across 11 states. 2 associated Listeria-related deaths, 23 hospitalizations. Symptoms of Listeria poisoning include fever, oftentimes high fever, body aches, muscle aches, fatigue, headache, confusion, even seizures or sepsis. Usually the onset is within 2 weeks of eating the contaminated food, so it can extend quite a significant period of time. If you have these cheese products in your refrigerator, and really good advice for anyone, throw away the recalled food, obviously, and strongly clean, disinfect the interior of your refrigerator, because this bacteria can actually multiply and spread in a refrigerated environment.
Dr. Jen, thank you so much. We turn now to ABC's Rena Roy here in the studio with the latest headlines. Good morning, Rena.
Hey, good afternoon, guys. It is so good to see you. I don't know about anyone else, but I walk around saying I get to be on the show with DeMarco Morgan. Okay, so those are my bragging rights. We do have a lot of news to get to. We began in the West with nearly 500 mudslides reported and even more historic rain on the way. Here's Ginger C.
The mudslide and landslide threat not over. Neither is the rain. And
look, the erosion there in California has also been a problem. 45 people were evacuated from the places there that are right on the cliff. So we are going to see more where that came from. The storm, for the most part, the heavy part of the fire hose has moved on. However, we're going to see part of that low slide down the coast. So Bay Area today and Los Angeles gets it tonight. Heavy band that comes through there, some of the higher elevations, snow, and showers all the way through Thursday. Finally dry out by the weekend.
And Donald Trump's clear rebuke by a trio of federal judges appointed by Democratic and Republican presidents, finding unanimously that the former president is not above the law. They rejected his claim of complete immunity from prosecution. Trump has denied all wrongdoing. And a landmark moment in a Michigan courtroom, the mother of a convicted school shooter found guilty of involuntary manslaughter in connection with her son's crimes. Jennifer Crumbley's sentencing is set for April. Federal investigators say 4 crucial bolts designed to hold the door plug in place on that Boeing 737 MAX 9 jet were apparently not replaced after work was done on an unrelated problem. And this was before the jet was even delivered. That's all according to a preliminary NTSB report. Boeing's president is saying an event like this must not happen on an airplane that leaves our factory. And from beautiful music to beautiful locks, Queen Bee announcing a new hair care line called Sacred. The legend posting on social media that the journey begins on February 20th, reminding fans her first job was sweeping up hair at her mom's salon, and that Destiny's Child got their start performing for clients there. So everyone starts somewhere, even Beyonce,
I
right?
say it's all in the family.
Never
there.
forget where you came from. That's right, Rita.
All
Thanks.
right, Rita, thank you. Well, still ahead on GMA3 on this Wednesday, the historic failure in the Republican-led House to impeach the head of Homeland Security, Ray Scott, with a deep dive from Capitol Hill.
Plus, star Sarah Gilbert of The Conners joins us. They kick off a 6th season tonight, marking a special milestone. We'll tell you what it is. We'll be right back.
I think we need a bigger yard.
With our credit? This yard's fine. Go on.
Too long. Didn't I try? Found you.
Yeah. Look, Karma can show us how to improve our credit for free. Then we can get a place at the bigger yard.
You hear that, Nora?
Yay.
From free credit scores to home loans and everything in between. Into Credit Karma. Download the app today.
I live with a broken phone. I can't trade in.
Okay, that's dramatic. Better plans Verizon.
Oh yeah, let's go.
Save up to $1,800. New and existing customers can trade in any Samsung phone for a new Galaxy S24 Plus watch and tablet. All on us. Only on Verizon.
I know what it's like to perform through pain. If you're like me, one of the millions suffering from pain caused by migraine, Nurtec ODT may. It's the only medication that can treat migraine when it strikes and prevent migraine attacks. Treat and prevent all in one.
Don't take if allergic to Nurtec. Allergic reactions can occur even days after using. Most common side effects are nausea, indigestion, and stomach pain.
Relief is possible. Talk to a doctor about Nurtec ODT.
Okay, so Domino's Perfect Combo includes 2 medium one-topping pizzas, 16 Parmesan bread bites, 8 cinnamon twists, and a 2-liter Coke. Today we're on the street asking real people how much they think it all costs.
All of it?
All of it.
$44, $45?
$34.99.
The 2 pizzas are probably 10 each.
75.
What if I told you that this Domino's Perfect Combo is only $19.99? Shut the front door.
No way. No. This will feed a family.
It's Domino's Perfect Combo, and it's all just $19.99.
Another day, another one. Every step you take today is an opportunity to carve out who you want to be. Stay in it. Hey, strength in numbers. Find your team, find your crew with them, baby. Let's go. Keep that pace, keep it consistent. Discipline. There's a reason you got on the straight to start this journey. But every single time, I want you to remember something. Discipline over distraction.
Welcome back, and thanks for staying with us. Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas survives an impeachment vote. The turn of events played out in House chambers as the GOP-led effort failed to drum up enough support.
The vote comes amid ongoing debate over securing the southern border. And joining us now from Washington, D.C. is senior congressional correspondent Rachel Scott. Rachel, thanks for joining us. Hey guys, good to see you. Okay, so let's talk about this. This impeachment push flopped due to a handful of Republicans. Why did GOP leaders think they had the votes for this? Was this stunning, as we said?
Well, I got to tell you guys, there's a saying here on Capitol Hill that you don't go to the floor unless you have the votes. So this was nothing short than an embarrassing setback for House Republicans. House Republican leadership thought that they had the votes walking into this vote to try to impeach Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas. They knew it was going to be a close call. They could only afford to lose 3 Republicans. We were watching this vote unfold on the House floor. They lost 3 Republicans. They could not afford to lose anymore. And then all of a sudden, Democratic Representative Al Green of Texas walks in. He had just actually had abdominal surgery. He came in wearing his scrubs. He was in a wheelchair. He cast that vote against this impeachment effort, defeating the Republican push. It was such a nail biter, though. But like I said, this is not what House Republican leadership was expecting walking into that chamber.
So if this was all rooted in policy disagreements and not corruption, not a crime, what did GOP leaders expect to happen?
And this was the push that they were making. They were saying that he had committed an impeachable offense over his handling of the border, but you had a handful of Republican lawmakers who came forward and said, look, this is over a policy dispute. This does not amount to high crimes and misdemeanors. That's why ultimately you have a handful of Republicans that just rejected the party's message on this, saying that it's a very bad precedent. Now you have House Speaker Mike Johnson. He is vowing to try this all over again. But once again, it all comes down to the math. He has a razor-thin majority here in the House, and it's unclear if he has the votes to actually make this successful.
Now, this impeachment vote comes amid a very contentious debate over a new Senate bipartisan border bill. We know this is a very important topic to voters. Republicans wanted this. So what is the holdup now?
Important topic, and also compromise on such a critical issue like this is rare here on Capitol Hill. So you have this landmark bipartisan deal that provides $20 billion in border security. It would shut down the border when migrant apprehensions reach 5,000 a day. Those are all things that Republicans wanted. And in exchange, Democrats got additional aid for both Israel and Ukraine. So Republicans were part of this deal, helped negotiate it. Democrats did as well. And then all of a sudden, Republicans are backing away from it now, calling it dead on arrival here in the House. They don't have votes in the Senate. And so now, after 4 months of negotiations on this critical issue that both parties acknowledge they wanted something done, it's going absolutely nowhere.
President Biden is saying the former President Donald Trump is standing in the way of getting Republicans to support this bill. Just how much influence does Trump have still in Washington?
Trump has a massive grip on the Republican